He was once a soldier, a weapon of the government, but even death betrayed him, twisted him into something monstrous, something more. Reborn in the fires of hell, Simmons emerged as Spawn, a soldier of darkness wielding unimaginable power. But what exactly are those powers? How far do they reach, and what are their limits? Today we're going to uncover the truth about Spawn's abilities. So let's start with the big one, Necroplasm. If you're even a casual Spawn fan, you've probably heard the term, but do you really know what Necroplasm is? Necroplasm is the essence of Spawn's powers, a mysterious and incredibly potent substance. It's literally the source of everything Spawn can do, but here's the catch. Necroplasm isn't just a random magical energy, it's the life force of hell itself. Malboja, the demon who transformed Simmons into Spawn, gave him the ability to manipulate Necroplasm, which grants him supernatural powers. And what's crazy about Necroplasm is that it doesn't just fuel Spawn's abilities, it's also a constant reminder of the dark forces trying to control him. It's one of his traumas. That suit, that Necroplasm is always trying to get the better of him. And you see, Necroplasm is tied directly to Spawn's soul and is a piece of hell that's been woven into his very existence. In essence, it's what makes him a Hellspawn. But here's the thing, Necroplasm isn't unlimited. It's a finite resource that keeps Spawn grounded in the world of the damned. When he uses too much, it can run out, and that can have serious consequences. And what we're talking about is his power meter, which we will go into later. Now let's talk about how Necroplasm manifests. It's not just some glowing, intangible energy. It actually gives Spawn the power to manipulate matter itself. Think of it like his fuel. He can create weapons, armor, even alter his form with it. It's the backbone of nearly all of his powers. Now let's talk about the sheer brutality of Spawn's physical abilities. Simmons may have been a top tier assassin before his transformation, but his Hellspawn powers put him in a whole new league. I mean, this brother could really take on Superman if he wanted to, or if that would allow. It's true, he's known for his superhuman strength, which is on display in some seriously awe-inspiring feats in the comics. I mean, he defeated Urizen, whom was strong enough for heaven and hell to have to team up just to stand a chance with. If we're talking numbers, Spawn's strength has been compared to some of the most powerful beings in the universe, including angels, demons, and even gods. But it's not just strength that makes Spawn so dangerous, it's also his durability. Spawn's ability to withstand insane amounts of punishment is next level. He can take hits that would cripple most heroes, and yet he keeps going. This isn't just about muscle, it's about resilience. Whether he's being blasted by necroplasmic energy or taking hits from celestial beings, Spawn has an unyielding will and an almost invincible body that allows him to survive where others would fall. Now you know we gotta go into his healing factor. Spawn has an absolutely mind-blowing regenerative ability that allows him to recover from nearly any injury. And I'm talking about injuries that would be game over for most heroes, like being impaled, dismembered, burned to a crisp, or even getting his heart ripped out. Yeah, I said that. The healing factor is another gift from the Necroplasm that runs through his veins. It works rapidly, regenerating any damage to his body. So for example, if Spawn loses an arm in battle, the Necroplasm can regrow it in a matter of seconds. Or if he's stabbed and his heart is removed, as we see right here, he can heal from the wounds in minutes. Sometimes even seconds, depending on how much Necroplasm he has at his disposal. But here's the thing, just like with his other powers, the more he heals, the more Necroplasm he consumes. That means he needs to keep a balance to avoid running out of power. But if he has enough Necroplasm, nothing can really keep him down for long. Now we've seen Spawn create all sorts of crazy things from his body using Necroplasm, and it's honestly one of the really cool aspects of his abilities. Not only can Spawn create weapons like chains, swords, and blades from his own body, and he would prefer to use his natural ability than doing all this other stuff, but he can alter his entire form. He's able to change his appearance, assuming different identities or disguises as needed. He altered his appearance in Spawn issue number 3 to another race just so he could see his wife Wanda again, because his true form, his true hell form, you know she's not going to be with that. And let's not forget how he altered another man's appearance who happened to be a KKK member so his boys wouldn't recognize him. And we gotta talk about Spawn's ability to teleport. I mean, come on, don't we all fantasize about teleportation from one way to another? I would love to just be like, hey, I'm going from here to there in a matter of seconds. But teleportation allows Spawn to travel through space and time, instantly appearing anywhere in the world. Teleportation is one of those abilities that lets him get the upper hand in battle, especially escaping tricky situations or pursue his enemies without hesitation. It's all powered by the necroplasm that courses through his veins. There are limitations to his teleportation though. For one, it's not always easy to pinpoint exactly where he wants to go, especially if he's been drained of necroplasm. And sometimes, when he's in a weakened state, his teleportation abilities can become erratic or difficult to control. But when he's at full power, Spawn can move through dimensions and space like it's no big deal. We've already covered some of Spawn's most well-known abilities, but let's take a look at the other powers in his vast arsenal that make him even more formidable. Another unique power of Spawn is his ability to control the elements. While not often emphasized, Spawn has occasionally demonstrated control over natural elements including fire, earth, and air. For instance, Spawn can create walls of flame to protect himself or manipulate the earth around him to trap enemies or create powerful shockwaves. These elemental abilities give him an even wider range of offense and defense, which is something I wish the Vikings had in the playoffs, but hey, we're not going to talk about that. We're talking about Spawn. Getting back on topic here, that makes him more versatile in combat, no matter the environment or circumstances. Now, this might be one of the more subtle powers of Spawn's arsenal, mind control. It's incredibly potent. Spawn has occasionally shown the ability to control the minds of weaker beings, including demons and mortals, and even dogs. This isn't his go-to ability, but when he needs to bend the will of others to his own, he can manipulate their thoughts and actions, whether it's forcing an enemy to turn against their own allies or controlling a powerful demon to serve his will. Mind control is a dangerous tool that's in Spawn's kit. Now we're going to talk about soul manipulation. This power taps into the darkest part of Spawn's being, his connection to hell and the souls trapped within it. Spawn has the ability to manipulate souls, either using them as currency in his dealings with hell or absorbing them for his own gain. His most terrifying ability though is the way he can consume souls, essentially wiping out his enemies by taking out their very essence. This ability is one of the most dangerous aspects of Spawn's powers, as it goes beyond physical destruction and affects the spiritual realm itself. Now, as promised, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, it's pretty clear that Spawn is a powerhouse with nearly limitless abilities. His imagination is one limitation to Spawn and how he can use his powers. But there's a critical aspect of Spawn's powers that keeps him from being totally unstoppable, and that's the power meter. We gotta talk about that. The power meter is a concept introduced in the Spawn's universe that acts as a balancing mechanism for his incredible abilities. Think of it like a battery. The more Spawn uses his powers, the more necroplasm he consumes, and his power meter drains. So too does his strength. This means that Spawn can't just go around using abilities whatever he wants without any kind of consequences. He needs to conserve his necroplasm, his power. Otherwise, he risks running out of power and becoming vulnerable, and if his power meter depletes to zero, that'll be his second death. And that's what Mabozja wants, and that was mentioned in an earlier Spawn issue. That's what Mabozja told him. You can use all your power to kill all the people you want, but use it wisely, because if you use it all, you're mine. That booty is mine. Second death, you're in hell forever. So this idea of the power meter adds an element of strategy to Spawn's battles. He has to carefully manage how much energy he uses, and sometimes that means holding back when he could unleash devastation. It also forces Spawn to face real consequences when his energy runs low. So when his power meter depletes, Spawn can become weaker, and even though his regeneration powers keep him alive, he may not have the strength to defend himself or fight back. There are several instances in the comics where we see Spawn facing situations where his power meter is critically low and his abilities become severely limited, especially after the events of Spawn 350, where Nyx took the throne of hell, the dead zones enveloped the earth, which we're going to cover about the dead zones, and Spawn is reverted back to just his mortal form, or his mortal level of strength. Forgive me, I said mortal form, no. Mortal level of strength. So this vulnerability reminds us that even though Spawn is just as powerful, he's still bound to the laws of energy and balance. And in true Spawn fashion, this is something he's constantly battled against, adding another layer of complexity to his character. Now, despite Spawn being nearly indestructible, Spawn has his weakness, none of which should be underestimated. So we're going to dive into those key vulnerabilities and that can threaten even the mightiest Hellspawn. One of Spawn's most well-known weaknesses is his vulnerability to holy weapons and divine power. Given that Spawn was originally created by Hell, his existence is antithetical to Heaven's influence. This makes him highly susceptible to weapons or powers that are blessed or powered by the divine. For example, Throughout his journey, Spawn has clashed with angels and other celestial beings, only to find that their weapons, whether it's blessed sword, holy water, or divine magic, can cut through his necroplasm infused armor and hurt him in ways that typical weapons cannot. This is especially true in his battles with heaven's forces, or the sheer power of their divine might can easily overpower him if he's not careful. Spawn's weakness to holy weapons has been a critical part of many of his story arcs, where he has had to face angels or fight against forces of heaven itself. The divine energy they wield is often enough to send Spawn reeling and cause him to retreat to rethink his strategies. Let's talk about the dead zones, which I did talk about earlier, and the dead zones is another significant vulnerability Spawn faces. It's the dead zones, an area where his powers are nullified. The dead zone exists as a place beyond the reach of hell and heaven, a neutral space where neither side can influence the other. This means that in the dead zones, Spawn's powers are severely diminished or outright disabled. The dead zones has appeared in several Spawn storylines, acting as both a literal and metaphorical space of limitation. For Spawn, it represents a place where even his vast powers can be taken away, leaving him vulnerable to whatever threats lurk within. So as we've discussed, Spawn's abilities are dependent on necroplasm. If he runs out of necroplasm, he is severely and significantly weaker. Unable to use many of his powers, including shapeshifting, teleportation, and necroplasmic blast. While he can still fight physically because he was a trained CIA soldier or whatnot, his potential is tied directly to the energy that fuels him. In many stories where we see Spawn struggling to conserve his energy, often forced to make tough choices to ensure he doesn't run out of power during critical moments. Now that we've talked about Spawn's core powers and abilities and weaknesses, let's talk about how his abilities have evolved over time. So when Spawn first appeared in the 1990s, his powers were much more basic because he was still learning to focus his vengeance on dealing with the consequences of his contract with Malboja, and plus he was learning his powers and abilities as the story went on. And then we've seen Spawn gain new abilities, refine existing ones, and grow more confident in the use of his necroplasm. And in some storylines, Spawn has even ascended to godlike status, wielding cosmic power and battling some of the highest level entities in the universe. His abilities have grown exponentially, with the limits of his powers expanding to include more complex control over necroplasm, stronger regeneration, and a deeper connection to hell itself. There are also moments where Spawn had his power stripped away, Spawn 350, right? Forced him to start from scratch and build himself back up. This cyclical nature of power growth and loss is a big part of the Spawn's journey. Every time he rises to a new level of power, it's a reflection of his personal growth and struggle with his own existence. So what's next for Spawn? Well, if you're watching this video and you're not subscribed to RatedComics YouTube channel, you need to, because we're going to keep covering Spawn content as this content evolves. And also, we will find out what's next for Spawn, because this story is also, it's just a fun follow for me. Yes, there's some inconsistencies, and yes, you might get pissed off at some things here with the Spawn storyline, but you know you love it. You know it's got to be fun. It's like that toxic ex-girlfriend that lives next door. You gonna come back. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm just joking. I am just joking. But jokes aside, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the source of Spawn's powers to his necroplasm abilities and his insane abilities that he possesses and his weaknesses. So what you guys think of the video? Comment below, let me know. Also, don't forget to check out RatedComics.com for some really cool limited print Rated Comics exclusives to add to your comic book collection. Support the art, support the industry. Also, this video is sponsored by coffee, so if you'd like to buy a boy a cup of coffee, link in the description, or donate to the Super Thanks. But the greatest compliment you guys could do is by liking this video and subscribing to Rated Comics YouTube channel. Thank you again for watching. Until the next upload.